There's a moment in life where you realize you're no longer a kid anymore. And it's not because you turned 18, it's not because you graduated, but it's because the people who were supposed to protect you suddenly became the people you felt safest running away from. That summer changed everything for me. By the time senior year had rolled around, I finally felt like life was starting to make sense. For the first time ever, I had friends that I had genuinely connected with. I wasn't sitting alone anymore. I wasn't the awkward outsider trying to fit into places that never really accepted me. I had my small circle. My future was mapped out with the Army, and for once, I actually felt freedom creeping into my life. And I genuinely thought things were, finally getting better. But the truth is, when you spend that many years carrying around anger and shame and abandonment and silence inside of you, eventually it has to leak out somewhere. And mine leaked out in ways that hurt people. I've talked before about how bitterness can quietly shape a person, how unresolved pain doesn't just disappear because you ignore it. During this period of my life, I had become so angry at almost everyone around me without fully realizing it. I was angry at my father, I was angry at my mother, I was angry at my family, and I was angry at how isolated I had felt growing up. And eventually all these things turned me into someone that I didn't even recognize anymore. There was this piggy bank my grandparents kept in their room. Spare cash, change, bills, little small things collected. And little by little, I had started taking from it. Not because I was starving, not because I desperately needed money. I was honestly working my own job at the time. But it was because the anger that I had felt had twisted my thinking into believing that hurting people back somehow balanced the scales. And that's the scary thing about bitterness. It convinces you that your actions are justified because of your wounds. And at the time, I didn't really think about the consequences. I didn't think about betrayal. I didn't think about how badly it would hurt the people around me. I just kept feeding the resentment until eventually one day it all came crashing down. I remember sitting in my girlfriend's car after school one day when my grandfather had called me. And you can tell when someone's voice already is made up in their mind before the conversation even starts. And he told me not to come home. They said they had found money missing, so they knew it was me, and said he was packing my things. And I remember sitting there feeling this weird mix of emotions, because part of me felt guilty because I knew the truth, and then part of me felt angry because I thought nobody understood everything that I had been carrying around for all these years. And that part of me just felt abandoned all over again. But underneath all of it, I felt exposed. Because eventually, every hidden thing comes into light. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with nowadays. We hide the pain. We hide addictions. We hide bitterness. We hide habits. We hide anger. We hide loneliness. And then we wonder why life starts collapsing around us. Because hidden wounds eventually become visible destruction. That phone call marked the official beginning of me having nowhere left to go. No stable home, no family foundation, no place that truly felt permanent. I packed my clothes into garbage bags like I had before and left again. And honestly, after enough times of moving place to place, you stop seeing home as a location. You start surviving emotionally instead of living emotionally. Thankfully, My girlfriend at the time, her and her family stepped in during that season of my life. Both sides of her family welcomed me in. They fed me and they gave me somewhere to sleep. And they treated me kindly. And looking back now, I realize how badly I needed that kindness. Because when people spend years feeling unwanted, even those small acts of love feel life-changing. But even then, the damage inside me was already growing. The relationship slowly started falling apart. I became extremely insecure, overprotective, emotionally unstable, and I didn't know how to process fear of abandonment in a healthy way because I had never actually learned how to. And eventually I found myself doing what wounded people often do. I was trying to control what I was terrified of losing. The arguments between us increased. The trust disappeared. Communication broke down. Then one day, sitting by a creek we used to spend so much time together at, the relationship officially ended. And I still remember the storm rolling in afterward. I remember standing under the shelter, soaked in the rain while she drove away, which I know sounds ironic. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it honestly matched exactly how my life felt and was during that season. You know, everything was cold, everything was unstable, and everything was temporary. And underneath all of that was this just growing darkness I didn't know how to explain yet. That breakup, losing my family, years of emotional isolation, feeling unwanted, those things became fuel for what came next. You know, the addictions, the self-destruction, the numbness, the running. Because when people don't heal emotionally, they usually cope chemically, physically, sexually, or mentally. Something always fills the void. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm sharing these stories publicly now. Not because I want sympathy, not because I want people feeling bad for me, but because somebody watching this video right now is carrying that exact same weight. And you, my friend, you might look functional on the outside. You might still go to work. You might still smile. You might even still joke around. And you still show up. But inside, you're exhausted. You're angry. You're lonely. You're ashamed. And you're disconnected. And maybe nobody even knows. I need you to understand something that I wish somebody would have told me back then. Pain that isn't confronted eventually becomes identity. You start becoming the very thing that wounded you. That is why healing matters. That is why accountability matters. That is why honesty matters. Because if you don't deal with what's happening inside of you, life eventually forces it to the surface. Mine was only the beginning. The army was next. And I truly believed leaving for the infantry training was going to save me. I thought if I escaped my environment, escaped Ohio, escaped the memories, and escaped the pain, maybe, just maybe, I could finally become somebody else. But the truth is, you can change locations without changing on the inside. And if you carry chaos inside yourself, eventually, you just bring it everywhere you go. And that realization would take years for me to fully understand. But this season of my life, this was the beginning of the spiral. And strangely enough, it was also the beginning of rebuilding myself.